Music nerds will spend hours in dark corners of pubs and on internet forums talking about bands that have difficult second albums. Now, I'm a car nerd, so I have the same feelings about car companies, like Cupra for example. Its first electric car, the Born, has been a great hit. It's good to drive, it's great looking, and everyone seems to love it. Now they've got that second album, and it's this, the Tavascan. So is this going to be a masterpiece like Led Zeppelin 2, or really disappointing like Guns N' Roses? I'll let you know in just a minute when I've had a drive, but please like and subscribe to the channel and start an argument about second albums in the comments, so it does great things for our algorithms.
I ran a Cupra Born for a few months and it had a genuinely odd effect on people. Everyone seemed to love it and like the brand, including me. So I'm genuinely excited to try this Tavascan. It's an SUV coupe in the style of a Volkswagen ID.4 or the fastback Skoda Enyaq, although Cupra would probably prefer comparisons to the BMW iX2 and maybe a Tesla Model Y. At 4.6 metres long, the Tavascan is slightly longer than a Volkswagen ID.4 but marginally shorter than the Model Y. It has a much sportier and more aggressive look than either though, as you'd expect from a Cupra. There's also this illuminated Cupra logo on the nose. It's expected the Tavascan will be racing the Vauxhall Frontera to be the first production car with a lit-up front badge in Europe. They used to be illegal as it was thought people would mistake them for a motorbike, but now they're allowed. What do you think? Is it classy, or are you worried about drivers coming the other direction thinking you're a moped delivering pizzas? Then there's this polished black A-pillar connecting the windscreen to the side glass, which the press release says is meant to look like a racing driver's helmet.
And then you've got these three lights here, which are going to be a new feature on all new Cupras. I quite like them, they're quite distinctive. At the side, got some big old wheels, again with these copper accents, which really lets it know that you're driving a Cupra. Is it just me, or these door handles look a bit weird, like they're from a different car? They feel like it should be up there, but maybe it is just me. It's an SUV coupe, of course, so you've got this swooping back here, but no rear wiper, one of my pet hates. Illuminated badge at the back too, and this quite complicated structure down here that looks like it's from a sort of touring car. The boot is pretty huge, although it's not that deep. Underneath the floor here is a little place to put your cables. On the inside it's really quite dramatic, especially compared to like a Born or an ID.4. I mean, just look at it. The most obvious part is this central spine, they call it. You think a spine should be in the back, but no, here it is. And you've got the same materials here. Now some of them are a bit cheap feeling in places, but it's certainly better than the Volkswagens that we've been used to and criticised a lot. It's really comfortable too. There's a huge screen here and a little one here that has all the essential information. You've got haptic buttons on the steering wheel, which if you've driven a Volkswagen before, you know takes some getting used to. Then underneath here there's two buttons. One has a Cupra logo and one has drive written on it, and that scrolls through the different drive modes. But this Cupra button takes you straight to the Cupra mode, which is more sporty. There's also in here an awful lot of ambient lighting. So these bits on the door panel light up, for example, and there's all sorts of other lines and things that I'm not quite sure about it. I mean, it's certainly distinctive, but it's a little bit Las Vegas for me. Tell me what you think in the comments. It's quite light and airy in the back here. I mean, there's lots of black, but you've got these copper accents to lighten up a bit. If you're a taller driver though, you might find the people behind a bit squished.
There's some nifty tech too, including Car2X, which allows communication between vehicles to share road information about emergencies and broken down vehicles and accidents. You can also use your mobile phone as a remote control to pull a Cupra out of tight parking spaces in shopping centres, for example. But now I'm going to be the one driving it rather than my mobile phone.
But of course, a Cupra is all about the driving, and as soon as you get in this car, you notice that it has a sporty feel. The steering has that kind of direct go-kart, almost mini-like quality to it, where there's very few turns from lock to lock. Now that can get a little tiring on the motorway where you're having to make sort of constant adjustments, but certainly when you're in the bends, it's much nicer than you'd expect from an SUV. Now the brakes though are a bit odd. This is the first Volkswagen Group car which has paddles to adjust your regeneration. Now that's all great, and you also have the B mode, but I'm not quite sure when I'm meant to be using B mode and when I'm meant to be using the brake pedal and the paddles. And the car also gets a bit confused, it seems, because sometimes you put your foot on the brake and there's a bit of a spongy feel, as though it's not quite sure whether to use the regen or the brake pads.
The Tavascan will be available with two power outputs. The lowest is a single motor rear drive with 286 horsepower. This gives a range of around 341 miles from a 77 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Drivers wanting more power can plump for the twin motor version, and that will have 340 horsepower in total and all-wheel drive. This top version, called the VZ, can reach 62 miles an hour in 5.6 seconds and has a range of around 321 miles from that same 77 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Up to 30% of the vehicle's power can be fed to the front wheels, which should mean that you get a nice dynamic feel like a rear-wheel drive car.
Now, that's a reasonable amount of power, but it never feels kind of super quick. It's more fast enough. I think generally this is a perfectly pleasant car, but it doesn't get me excited and it doesn't kind of tingle my senses and make me want to go out for a drive like you get in something like the Born. It doesn't feel like a hot hatch or even a performance SUV. It just feels like a kind of fast family car, which is what I guess it is really, but it doesn't have that essence of Cupra that I hoped it would. And we've always had a moan in the past about these haptic buttons, and you do kind of get used to them. I ran a Born for a few months and in the end I almost liked them, but on this you do seem to brush them accidentally. Somehow earlier I managed to call the SOS without even pressing the button up there. So are they going to take some getting used to, or are they just a bit wrong? The range on the single motor version is 341 miles, which is pretty good. If you want the twin motor version, you're going to have to lose 20 miles from your range. When you get to the charge station though, it will charge at 135 kilowatts, which is reasonable, but it's certainly nothing special. Cupra say that it will maintain that peak for longer, so you can still get a 10 to 80% charge in under half an hour. But I suspect that a car like a Kia EV6 will have gone long into the distance after charging while you're still waiting there plugged in. When it comes to the suspension, this is a sporty car, so it's firm like you'd expect, but it rides generally pretty well. You do get some sort of shimmy around the corners because it's a high-up SUV, as you'd expect. If you're used to a lower car, it might make you feel a little bit seasick. Visibility is generally pretty good. You've got some really big mirrors as well, which is unusual in an electric car because normally they make them tiny for aerodynamic efficiency. You can't see much out the back though, especially when the headrests are up, where they just kind of block the entire view.
The Tavascan's price is expected to start at around £47,300. That's a couple of grand above an ID.4 and slightly under the cheapest Tesla Model Y. The UK specifications are still to be finalised, but the current specs suggest the heat pump, heated steering wheel and seats will be an option though, which seems a bit tight.
So has Cupra pitched the Tavascan just right? Is it music to my ears? Well, it doesn't evoke the same sort of passion that I had for the Born, but it's a competent, good, fun to drive, practical family car. And that's possibly all some people will want.